Going direct has failed. Grub Street Journal 2025 Summer Edition. By Grub Street in Exile. Online flipbook. Grub Street Journal Summer 2025. PDF. PDF with embedded links to financial misdeeds and perps. Timeline of some key events. The going direct paradigm has failed. The die-hard cultists like Kier Starmer default to a war mongering setting. As I write this, a banner meme is directly below this window. Putin will invade Europe is the new Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. My own view, Francis, is one I share with Lewis Mumford. The gates of the technocratic prison will, in spite of their ancient and rusty hinges, still open, as long as we are prepared to walk out. The technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. Zbigniew Brzezinski, grubstreetinexile.subst. grubstreetinexile.subst. The marketplace of mindlessness. In the great bazaar of modern media, where attention is both currency and commodity, we find ourselves in what Chesterton might have called, end quote, the marketplace where nothing is sold but the selling itself. End quote. The revelation from Gielin's analysis that 9 media conglomerates control 90% of international media presents us with a peculiar modern paradox. The illusion of choice masking the reality of monopoly. grubstreetinexile.subst. The way out begins with what Charlton calls, end quote, the recovery of attention. End quote. This is not merely a matter of reducing our media consumption, but of fundamentally altering our relationship with information itself. It requires what Chesterton might have termed, end quote, the courage to be unfashionably focused, end quote, to resist the constant pull of the next notification, the next crisis, the next distraction. End quote. Of course it's funny, but not out loud, end quote. grubstreetinexile.subst. A fiction that elevates my soul is dearer to me than a host of base and despicable truths. Pushkin. End quote. Fake news, end quote. Trump's flip-flop to the golden turd, v. Hunter Biden pronounced Hunter. The end quote, going direct, end quote, paradigm's failure. With help from common sense. Conclusion, the path forward. In conclusion, my friends, the end quote, going direct, end quote, paradigm serves as a cautionary tale. A reminder that in our quest for efficiency and control, we must not lose sight of the principles that underpin our society. We must strive for a future where the economy serves the people, not the other way around. Let us take inspiration from Paine, who dared to challenge the status quo and envision a world where liberty and justice prevail. For in this great endeavor, we find not only our purpose, but our very humanity. Reasons to be cheerful, parts 1, 2, 3. Going direct is, ent. Working its failures are features, not bugs. Say no to the money shuffle. And wake up. grubstreetinexile.subst. Trilateral Commission and Technocracy. From 2013, Patrick Wood of Technocracy News. grubstreetinexile.subst. Technocracy.news, founded in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski, the Trilateral Commission embarked on a new international economic order based on technocracy. Brzezinski called this the, end quote, technotronic era, end quote, in his 1970 book, Between Two Ages. History now reveals the original trilateral strategy and the means by which they have carried it out. Publicerades den 5 November. 2013 Technocracy.news. The Trilateral Commission and Technocracy, 2013. BitChute.com/video/Reba. On YouTube, both 55 minutes long. YouTube.com/watch, v = 9BL. The Going Direct Paradigm, a Cautionary Tale. The failure of the Going Direct Paradigm. The Going Direct Paradigm has failed. The die-hard cultists like Kier Starmer default to a warmongering setting. As I write this, a banner meme is directly below this window. Putin will invade Europe is the new Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. A vision shared with Lewis Mumford. My view aligns with that of Lewis Mumford. The gates of the technocratic prison will, despite their ancient and rusty hinges. Still open as long as we are prepared to walk out. Zbigniew Brzezinski warned us. The technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. The marketplace of mindlessness. In the great bazaar of modern media, where attention is both currency and commodity, we find ourselves in what Chesterton might have called, end quote, the marketplace where nothing is sold but the selling itself. End quote. Gielin's analysis reveals that 9 media conglomerates control 90% of international media, presenting a paradox, the illusion of choice masking the reality of monopoly. Recovery of attention. The way out begins with what Charlton calls, end quote, the recovery of attention. End quote. This is not just about reducing media consumption, it requires fundamentally altering our relationship with information. It demands the courage to be unfashionably focused, resisting the constant pull of notifications and distractions. A fiction that elevates the soul. Pushkin once said, "A fiction that elevates my soul is dearer to me than a host of base and despicable truths." In today's landscape, end quote, fake news, end quote, often trumps the reality we face. Conclusion, the path forward. In conclusion, the end quote, going direct, end quote, paradigm serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that in our quest for efficiency and control, we must not lose sight of the principles that underpin our society. We must strive for a future where the economy serves the people, not the other way around. Let us take inspiration from Paine, who dared to challenge the status quo and envision a world where liberty and justice prevail. Reasons to be cheerful. Going direct is, working. Its failures are features, not bugs. Say no to the money shuffle and wake up. Further reading. The Trilateral Commission and Technocracy, 2013. Founded in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski, the Trilateral Commission embarked on a new international economic order based on technocracy. Brzezinski called this the, end quote, technotronic era, end quote, in his 1970 book, Between Two Ages. A watch on BitChute. Watch on YouTube, 55 minutes long. The Ethical Landscape of Usury, a comprehensive reflection by G.K. Chesterton. Introduction, Understanding Usury. Usury. The very word evokes a sense of moral outrage, a specter that has haunted the corridors of economic thought for centuries. As I sit to reflect on this age-old practice of charging excessive interest on loans, I am reminded of the profound moral, social, and economic implications it carries. Usury is not merely a financial term, it is a concept steeped in ethical debates that reflect the values and beliefs of our societies. From the ancient civilizations that first grappled with its implications to our modern discussions surrounding lending practices, the ethical considerations of usury have evolved, shaped by religious doctrines, philosophical insights, and economic realities. In this discourse, I shall weave together the timeline of ethical thinking on usury, drawing upon the wisdom of influential thinkers such as Aristotle, Aquinas, Bentham, and Smith. I will also integrate these reflections with Bernard Littaire's integral analysis of money, which provides a multifaceted framework for understanding the complex interplay between individual beliefs, collective norms, and institutional practices related to usury. Timeline of ethical thinking on usury. Ancient times. In Mesopotamia, circa 2000 BCE, we find early records indicating that interest was charged on loans, yet excessive interest was frowned upon. The Code of Hammurabi, that ancient legal framework, regulated interest rates, reflecting a societal concern about exploitation. Here, we see the seeds of ethical consideration being sown, as the ancients recognized the need for balance in economic transactions. Moving to ancient Greece, around 400 BCE, philosophers like Aristotle criticized usury, viewing it as unnatural since money itself does not generate value. Aristotle's ethical framework emphasized virtue and the role of money as a means of exchange, rather than a source of profit. His arguments laid the groundwork for later critiques of usury, framing it as a moral failing. Middle Ages. The Christian Church, from circa 300 to 1500 CE, condemned usury, defining it as the charging of interest on loans. Key figures, such as St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, argued that money should facilitate exchange, not profit. Aquinas, in particular, asserted that usury was a sin, as it violated the natural law governing human relationships. In parallel, Islamic law emerging around 600 CE explicitly prohibited riba, usury, leading to the development of Islamic finance principles that encourage risk sharing and profit sharing instead. Renaissance to Enlightenment. During the Renaissance, from the 14th to the 17th century, we witnessed a gradual relaxation of usury laws in Christian Europe. Thinkers like John Calvin argued for a more pragmatic approach, allowing interest under certain conditions, particularly if it served the common good. This marked the beginning of a more flexible understanding of economic practices. In the 18th century, Jeremy Bentham published his pamphlet Defense of Usury in 1787, arguing that charging interest is a natural and necessary part of economic transactions. He contended that usury laws hindered economic growth and that individuals should be free to negotiate interest rates. Bentham sought to persuade Adam Smith, who held a critical view of usury, through correspondence, arguing that Smith's ethical stance was overly simplistic and detrimental to economic progress. Modern era. As we entered the 19th century, legal reforms in many countries began to allow interest, reflecting the growing acceptance of capitalism and financial markets. The debates on usury continued into the 20th century, with various religious institutions evaluating their positions. For example, some Protestant denominations began to accept interest as a necessary component of modern economies. In the 21st century, we find ourselves amidst ongoing discussions about predatory lending practices and the ethical implications of high-interest loans. Movements advocating for fair lending practices challenge traditional views on usury, emphasizing the need for ethical standards in financial transactions. Integrating the timeline into Leiter's integral analysis of money. Now, let us consider how this timeline of usury fits into Bernard Leiter's integral analysis of money, which categorizes knowledge into 4 quadrants: interior individual, interior collective, exterior individual, and exterior collective. Interior individual. In Bentham's Defense of Usury, we see a shift in individual ethical reasoning, emphasizing rational self-interest and the utility of financial transactions. His utilitarian perspective argues that the benefits of allowing interest outweigh the moral objections, facilitating economic growth and personal freedom. In contrast, Smith's opposition to usury stems from a moralistic view, emphasizing potential exploitation and social harm. His ethical concerns highlight the psychological and moral dimensions of individual behavior in economic contexts. Interior collective. The contrasting views of Bentham and Smith illustrate the tension within collective beliefs about money and ethics. While Bentham sought to challenge and change prevailing norms regarding usury, Smith's views reflect the dominant moral framework upheld by many religious and philosophical traditions of the time. The influence of religious institutions, particularly the Christian Church and Islamic law, shaped collective beliefs about usury, significantly impacting societal norms and values regarding money, debt, and morality. Exterior individual. The evolution of legal frameworks around usury demonstrates how individual actions and decisions regarding lending practices have changed over time. Bentham's advocacy for usury contributed to the gradual legal acceptance of interest in the evolving capitalist economy, showcasing how individual thinkers can influence broader economic practices and legal reforms. Exterior collective. The debates surrounding usury, supported by Bentham's works, reflect the shifting governmental approaches to financial regulation in response to changing societal values and economic needs. The transition from condemnation to acceptance of interest illustrates broader economic theories and practices that emerged during the Renaissance and Enlightenment. Conclusion. By analyzing the ethical thinking on usury through Litter's integral framework, we can see how both individual beliefs and collective norms have evolved in response to changing economic landscapes. The integration of Jeremy Bentham's defense of usury, Adam Smith's critiques, and the influence of the Whig Party highlights the complex interplay between ethical considerations and financial practices throughout history. G.K. Chesterton's imagined sequel to Utopia of Usurers. In an imagined sequel to G.K. Chesterton's Utopia of Usurers, the narrative might unfold as follows. Key themes: plutocracy and exploitation. Chesterton's characters would explore how the very system that impoverishes individuals uses that impoverishment as justification for further control and enslavement. The analogy of a highwayman handing over a victim to the police for being destitute serves as a critique of modern economic systems that perpetuate inequality while claiming to uphold justice. Eugenics and pseudoscience. The narrative critiques the emerging reliance on pseudoscientific justifications for economic policies, paralleling modern discussions about the ethical implications of technology and governance. Quote from Chesterton, end quote, "The key fact in the new development of plutocracy is that it will use its own blunder as an excuse for further crimes." End quote. Utopia of Usurers. Modern parallels. The themes of economic control and the ethical implications of financial practices resonate with contemporary discussions around central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, carbon currencies, and the implications of corporate influence in politics as highlighted by Roger Lewis. The historical context of usury laws and the evolving ethical frameworks surrounding lending practices provide a rich backdrop for these modern debates. Final thoughts. This analysis not only traces the historical evolution of ethical thinking on usury, but also highlights the relevance of these discussions in contemporary contexts, illustrating the enduring struggle for economic justice and ethical governance. The integration of Chesterton's critique underscores the importance of examining the moral implications of our economic systems as we navigate the complexities of modern financial landscapes. Remember that we sometimes demand explanations for the sake not of their content, but of their form. Our requirement is an architectural one, the explanation a kind of sham corbel that supports nothing. I. Ludwig Wittgenstein, Philosophical Investigations. Remember that we sometimes demand explanations for the sake not of their content, but of their form. Our requirement is an architectural one, the explanation a kind of sham corbel that supports nothing. I. Ludwig Wittgenstein, Philosophical Investigations. Shibboleth, Guernica as metaphor for Gaza, Hezbollah. Gaza as simile for Guernica. End quote. Hezbollah end quote, as metaphor. Dresden. Guernica as metaphor for Gaza. Gaza as simile for Guernica. End quote. Hezbollah end quote, as metaphor. End quote. Hezbollah end quote, as simile. The sharper lens, removable, brings the images home to you. Roger G. Lewis, 2025. Spank the Banker film. Storyline: what happened after the big banks were bailed out by taxpayers in 2008. Spank the Banker is a feature-length documentary film about the biggest bank heist in history, as global financial capitalism sought to rebuild its profits. The film follows the intimate stories of 6 ordinary but courageous individuals who refused to be intimidated and fought back against a corrupt financial system. For the first time, this film gives a voice to those thousands who were scammed and exposes in detail the vast corporate criminal conspiracy to defraud them. Tens of thousands of people were forcibly bankrupted and £100 billion of their assets stolen, destroying families and driving some to suicide. British politicians deliberately turned a blind eye to this massive fraud in case it threatened economic recovery. Meanwhile, bank executives fired internal whistleblowers, falsified documents, and used legal blackmail to block exposure of their actions. The major British television networks limited, https://www.imdb.com/title/tt1091702/?TTPL_PL_TT. For those who cannot access BitChute, I have embedded the film in the flipbook.